Hey guys, good evening. I know it's a bit later than normal. I had to fly back from New York today, so just got back into the real office. All right, so I wanted to talk to you guys about focus and scope, and this is kind of one of the things that we've been focusing on in our business. I mean, as we have a consulting business, and there's an endless opportunity to do all sorts of things in the consulting world. I just actually talked to someone else today about a project, a very large project, and would have been very profitable for us. But actually, we're going to bring in another company and actually give probably the entire job over to them, just because it's not in our core focus. It's working with a larger project and build out in a complete farm. And while that would be fun, I am actually more focused. We're more focused on the small farmer, the small grower, and really kind of empowering and working with those. So that's kind of one of the, that's just something we were talking about today as a team. And so I kind of wanted to share that with you. And so, I think as a farmer, there is always the thought or the idea that you could do everything yourself. And what I mean by that is, should you go out and decide to grow all these different crops? And someone asks, hey, can you grow me this specific type of tomato? So you throw a few of those in. And someone else, can you try this lettuce? And you throw a little bit of that in. And by the time you're done, you're growing over 100 or 200 or 300 varieties. And just managing all that can be a challenge. And so in our business, we suffered with this when we were running Kilpatrick Family Farm. Obviously, we wanted to be all things to all people. And that really was a challenge. And just in growing, there was that aspect. But also on the farm, there was the aspect of, should I do all the tasks? So when the tractor needs fixed, did I go out there with my wrenches, or did I call up someone to manage that for me and go back to my actual farming, which is getting the crops in the ground and doing the marketing and all that aspect of things. So another thing was, on our farm, we were had to clean up hedgerows and that sort of thing. Well, there's people out there that do a great job of that, have the equipment for that, and can do that a lot quicker and a lot faster than we could. And eventually we learned that, because a couple times we decided to do it ourselves, and one of the problems was we ended up throwing chips into one of our growing fields. And we tried to clean them up, but there were some left there, and if we had had someone professional do it, they would have known how to gotten rid of those. And what the chips caused is they caused the crop to really just not grow, because those chips were turned into the soil and tied up all the nitrogen. So that's just one of the things. So there's 3 points I want to bring up for this. I've kind of given you little examples on our farm, and I'm going to bring up 3 points of why I think it's very important for you to have a very streamlined focus for yourself as a farmer. And the first one would be, it can be dangerous. So there's certain things out there, whether if you're welding up equipment, or if you are doing electrical or fixing vehicles, or different things on your farm that you should really put to an expert, because there's a liability aspect there. We had one of our pieces of equipment. It was a flame weeder. It weighed a ton. It was on the back of our tractor, and someone didn't hook it up right, and it fell off, and it broke one of the connectors for it. And so instead of me trying to weld that myself, I ended up paying someone, and it cost me $200 to have someone weld that to get it fixed. I think it was maybe $150. It was like 2 hours of work. Well, and thinking about that, because I was like, oh man, I should have done this myself. But what I realized is when he came back and he showed me what he had done, it was a pin, and he had actually V'd out and cut the entire pin out and welded all the way back up through there. So instead of, I would have done, is I would have just welded around the outside of that probably. And what it would have done is it would have broken the next week, and it could have been very dangerous. So again, there's the one aspect of protecting yourself from danger, protecting yourself from liability will really help you. The second thing is that it's a distraction. And so, as you're farming, as you're growing vegetables, there's all these cool things you can do. And because you're usually the owner and the manager of the farm, you're like, well, I want to go do this. Or your neighbor calls up and say, hey, can you come help me throw hay tonight? And I did that as a farmer, and back in thinking about it, that was a great thing to do, and it earned me. It wasn't really the money I was after; it was more about helping the neighbor. And not that saying helping neighbors isn't great, but if it's pulling you away from going out and getting that rototilling done, which is going to allow you to get the seeding in, which is going to allow you to get the crop planted and that harvested on time when you need to, that's something you need to think about. So, it's a distraction. You don't want distractions in your business. You want to be laser focused. It's the kind of the analogy of a shotgun versus a a rifle. The shotgun's wide, just throws a lot out there, but it really doesn't affect that much. It's leaves a lot of little pieces and things going on. But with a rifle, it's one solid projectile which really does a lot of damage. And so that's something to think about on your farm. If you're trying to move your farm forward, you need to be focused in very closely on building your systems and really making things happen. Like one of the things I see people do is like, oh, I want to try adding biochar to my seeding mix. And I was just commenting on a friend's post on that. I'm not saying biochar is a bad thing. And this guy, a friend of mine, is in a great place to do the research because the operations he's in has that kind of time. But for most growers, if instead of going out there and getting the ground prepped and the crops in the field, he's playing around with biochar and figuring out how it's going to make his crops better, that is something I feel is a distraction, and he should be doing at a later point in his farming career when you have the entire farming system working. So, again, be careful of those distractions. And then the other thing, too, is it can be expensive, too. So I think that's the third one, is it can be very expensive. So if you're growing 100 different crops, one of the problems is you can't grow those 100 crops the best quality. You can't grow them all the best quality because you can't get all the exact special characteristics and growing conditions that they want. And so one of the things I've watched larger farms do is what they'll do is they'll split out so that, like, let's say their farm managers are split into managing just a couple crops. And so that means they're able to really dial in on those crops. And so Ray Tyler is a great friend of mine. The biggest things his farm's focused around is lettuce production. And Lay has really zeroed in on this and really made it, and he's able in Tennessee to have lettuce every single week of the year. Why? Because he really shrunk the focus, and he was not growing 50 crops. He's growing 5 to 10 crops for the first couple years to really make sure he dialed it in so we could have that lettuce every single week. And so I was just down there last month. We're working on some projects together, and so we were talking about what he's doing, and he's like, all right, he was in the greenhouse. We were looking at the crops. He said, I'm adding in 5 new crops this year. And I was like, well, okay. And he's like, okay, we've gotten lettuce down. We know exactly what we're doing. We've got it dialed in, and we have a system for it. And now we're going to start adding some other crops to kind of build up our marketing presence and offer more to our people that are buying from us. So, again, just going over this again. If you guys have questions about this, feel free to drop them in the comments below the Facebook video. But again, just to kind of summarize, as a farm, you need to have a focus. And that focus needs to be what I like to call the big rocks in your business. So the big, things that you're focused on, whether it be, building the infrastructure of your farm, or if it be setting up your crop systems, or if it be setting up your marketing plan, and kind of shed the little things that are distracting you. Whether it be trying to do your own mechanics, I think that's one of the first things, well, for me that went. I mean, if you're an expert mechanic and you can get it done in 5 minutes, then maybe that's something you want to do. But for most of us who struggle with it, that's something you want to outsource. Outsource the bookkeeping. Outsource some of the marketing we found was good for us to be outsourcing. And the reasons for that is, first of all, it can be dangerous. And I talked an example about, a hitch pin or a top linkage that I had to get welded, and how dangerous it would have been if I tried to attempt that myself, or if you're doing some of the wiring or something like that. Second is it's expensive. It can be expensive if you're not focusing on exactly what you need to focus on. And then it can also just be a distraction. So it can just prohibit you from taking what you need to focus on that week or that month and that year and going the long haul with that. So again, that's something we're focusing on in our business, trying to focus our scope on exactly who we help. And that's been a process. It's been about a year and a half to kind of figure that out. And I think we have a clear vision of where we're going now, and we're headed there. So I hope that was helpful. If you, again, have questions, feel free to drop them below. Like the video, share it. We do have a free webinar coming up next week. Actually, 3 free webinars. The first one will be on Monday. So we're going to drop the link in if you want to go to that and join us on the free webinar below after this. I'll go ahead and just drop the URL for that. But we're going to kind of discuss what we feel like the 5 pillars of a successful farm are. We're going to and focus is one of those sub-pillars. So it's under one of the 5 pillars that we will talk about. So if you want to, you can go ahead and sign up for that. We'll have those next week starting Monday. And you can learn all about how we built our farm and how when we work with farms, the 5 principles we use to help them be profitable quickly and have the right focus on their farm. So, all right, hope this was helpful. Go ahead and if you do think about things that you need to focus not on or you need to focus on, write those below. So tell me the things that you're going to cut and give to somebody else and the things that you are the big rocks that you need to focus on in your business. All right, have a great evening.